What's going on, family? I'm your host, Greg. This is my co-host,
LaQuisha.
and this is the Hallwaze podcast, where we navigate the hallways of life. Now, you may ask, what is Hallways? I'll tell you. Hallways is a conversation that we're having with you through these episodes where we talk about things from relationship, decision-making skills, all around trauma, and we give you guys the tools that you need to help navigate, to make right decisions, and pretty much overcome obstacles that we all deal with.
If you guys want to keep in touch with us or find out more of what we do at OIC, you can follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and you can go to our main website, oicsfl.org.
As always, navigating the hallways of life. Welcome back, Hallways family. Welcome back. This is season 1, episode 3, and I'm your host, Greg, and this is my co-host,
LaQuisha.
and we'll head back with you with more content, more smoke, right? So today's episode is called Delayed Gratification. The benefits of telling yourself no. So, LaQuisha, I realize, from life, from educating, just overall experiences, some people may find it easy to say no to other people. Some people may find it easy to say no to pressures at times. But one thing I realized, whether you're grown, paying bills, or you still live in your mama house, it is hard to tell yourself no.
Yes, it is.
Right? Why is it so hard, man? From your what you think? Why do you think it's so hard to tell you no?
Well, it's not like I have experience in this, but sometimes it's just that feeling of instant satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
You have a need for something, it's like you're craving it, and that instant satisfaction is always satisfying in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But as we were speaking about earlier, the buyer remorse, you do something, whether it's buying, an impulsive decision, and you do it and you realize, that satisfaction is only temporary.
Mm-hmm.
But that after effect it causes is what lasts longer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's key. And just before we even continue this conversation, definitely want to just lay some ground with a definition that we're going back to delayed gratification. We want to make sure that we all know what it means, right? So delayed gratification is a person's ability to resist an immediate reward so that they can get a more valuable future reward. Right, so keyword there is resisting. Right, so let's take a look at it. So for me to tell myself no because of an impulse I'm having, right, is it painful?
It is.
Okay.
Self-discipline is painful.
Okay. And I realize what makes it so painful is because we want what we want and we want it now.
Instant satisfaction.
We want it now, and not only are grown ups dealing with this issue, right? We're also dealing with this issue, especially within the schools, especially those who are adolescents, especially those from childhood all the way to high school age, right? And some areas that people may find themselves it's harder to say no to is basically what they want, right? Mm-hmm. So let's knock down some things that people may find it hard to say no to. And let's go ahead and get to the meat of this. Emotional regulation. Why is it so hard for me to say no to the feelings that I'm having? Anger, frustration, depression, the list goes on and on. What do I do with those feelings when they come up?
Well, it all depends on how a person handle emotion regulation. What I've noticed in the school is that a lot of times kids don't have a lot of emotional intelligence because they're so busy in that like fight or flight or the now that when their emotions speak, they have to have an emotional response. So the kids, they deal with that a lot with whether it's anger, the feeling of embarrassment, trying to prove points in the class, being mad about something or overwhelmed and not knowing what to do with that.
And I realize this a lot, especially in some of the schools that we served. Unfortunately, they're more likely to get into physical altercations or fights, right? And this deals specifically with the young guys, right? The fellas. One thing we try to teach them is it takes more effort not to get in a fight or to de-escalate a fight than just allow your emotions to drive you into a fight, right? Example, say you're in school and you realize, say somebody's roasting you, somebody's firing you up, somebody's embarrassing you, they're calling you out, right? And you're not wrong for defending yourself and letting that person know you feel uncomfortable. You're letting that person know not to do that, or you're letting that person know that you're trespassing boundaries. But it never stops there, right? Ideally, in reality, it never stops there, because guess what? That person is going to respond. And guess what? We have an audience. We have classmates. We have people. We have people with their phones out, right? Yep. And once all those factors come into play, guess what? Someone's embarrassed and someone wants to fight, right? The question is, why is it so hard to think of the consequences of getting involved in that fight versus not?
For the students, in that aspect, there is times where, especially in certain schools, where how you respond is going to determine how they treat you moving forward. So at times, if you respond as they would call, like you come off like you soft, then guess what? You're an easy target. Everybody's about to jump on you, because everybody got to prove a point. If you're a weak link, I'm going to look so good bullying you every day. But going back to what you said in the earlier beginning, if it is more work to stop and really weigh out your consequences. So in that moment when y'all sometimes it always starts from horseplay. Right. We're joking, we always like ranking each other, and then in this very moment you hit a little too below the belt, or Sam back there instigating it more. He like, oh, their favorite words. That's crazy. Me personally, I would never let nobody talk to me like that. That's a new form of instigating for them. Right. So, but Sam let everybody talk to him like that. But I'm putting the pressure on you because right now you're in the moment, and then that's how they fall into these things. But having to actually weigh out that, nah, I'm gonna walk away, or I'm gonna let you have it, or I'm gonna control my emotions in this moment, is so much harder than making that decision to, oh, you tried me, now I'm finna respond. Because it's easy, it's quick, instant. Some people say that's my natural instincts.
But is it doable?
It's doable.
Okay.
It's doable. It's definitely doable.
So it's doable, right? So we're not saying to allow yourself to be dormant, right, or allow people to take advantage of you, right? Of course, we would want you, encourage you to stand up for yourself, enforce your boundaries, right? Exhaust the options that you do have, rather than just immediately go into a physical altercation, and use those try to de-escalate the situation, because here are some of the consequences when you allow every situation or every time where someone bothers you or provokes you, you end up, lashing out in physical anger. You can end up hurting yourself and the individual. And the beef may not just stop there, right? Because guess what? Say you get the best of them in a fight. Guess what? They're not going to just leave it there, more likely, because other people are involved. Other people are seeing this. People are instigating to hype it up. Phones are out nowadays. It's on live. It's on Instagram, right? So that embarrassment in of itself may cause someone what they didn't have the courage to do before. They're more likely to do it now. Unfortunately, bringing guns to school, weapons to school, other people get involved. And now this one issue that started as a seed now grew up to a whole harvest, because why? We could not say no to our own emotions in that moment, especially when it comes to anger. Now, I'm sure because you have opportunities to deal with schools that are predominantly, I'm going to say female, are those issues still happening in that population as well?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I am not going to play who has the most or who has the less, but in my experience, when I'm dealing with especially like an all girls group, yes, it is super more of battle of the hierarchy in there. Okay. There's always different types of people and different types of experiences, different types of opinions. And when somebody goes against the grain, It turns into a battlefield in some of my classes, especially the all girls classes. But it's higher emotions involved because there's always a pull of power. And sometimes when it's a safer space, then they're able to have those easily conversations. Whereas in telling somebody, "Oh, you dumb," or "Oh, you don't know what you talk about," or "Oh, I would never let somebody do that to me." When they get more comfortable and they realize the common interest they all have, it kind of goes over smoothly. Then you'll see those conversations that used to get heated, it's now worked through. So when I see that, I'm always like, man, y'all could have did that from day one. Had y'all just control y'all emotions and that pull of, struggles. And I got to be the alpha. But definitely that emotional regulation, it makes it makes conversation more healthier. It makes building friendships easier. I see that a lot. Like a lot of times they're at odds with each other, and they come in this class and we're talking about stuff, and they start to vent into each other, or they don't talk to each other at all, but they hear each other's stories, and then it's like an unspoken rule that the beef is squashed.
That's key, right? Because not only does emotional regulation help when it comes to, those situations that we mentioned, but if we regulate our emotions more, if you guys, regulate your emotions more, control your emotions more, now you have to use the communication skills, right? And we're all about that. You'll hear that concept of communication being weaved out through all these episodes and all seasons because it's key. It's something that it's an art, actually. It's something that you never will eventually master because guess what? Every time you meet someone, you're meeting a different background, a different story, different definitions, different perspectives, different experiences, right? So even though you want everybody to be a one size fits all, that's not reality, right? So now it will kind of force you or encourage you to now, sharpen your communication skills, knowing when to speak, knowing when to listen, knowing how to be understanding, knowing how to disagree, but not allow the emotions to get to a point where you end up, verbally assaulting that person or physically assaulting that person. All those things come into play when it comes to emotional regulation, right? Now, another reason why they may find it hard to regulate emotionally is, to be honest with you, and that's not an insult, it's just a fact and reality, the brain is not fully developed. Right. And the brain is fully developed. It's something that we try to mention in the lessons that we teach is the brain is fully developed at the age of 25. Right. So from birth to 25 years old, guess what? Your brain is still forming. Your pathways are still forming, right? You're not there yet. It's okay, right? However, you still have the responsibility to, handle things in a mature manner, handle things in a way to where you can grow and overcome those thresholds, those issues that you may have, right? So the front part of the brain is called the prefrontal cortex, right? And that part is responsible for self-control, decision-making, thinking things through, being logical, right? Versus the other part of your brain, the emotional part, is called the amygdala, right? That's where LaQuisha mentioned the fight or flight things come from, the anger, the fear, all these emotions that come from that may try to drive you, that we may be more likely to, be led by, or our impulses may drive us to. But guess what? When it comes to interacting, when it comes to friendships, when it comes to altercations, you don't want the amygdala to be leading you in that moment. You don't want the amygdala to take the driver's seat, right? You want to take that amygdala and put it in the passenger seat, put a seatbelt on, and put the prefrontal cortex in the driver's seat. Why? Because you're more likely to make decisions that you won't regret later on. You're more likely to make logical decisions. You're more likely to have more self-control if you allow the prefrontal cortex to do the decision-making and allowing the emotions to enjoy the ride. Now, with that being said, LaQuisha, is having emotions a bad thing?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I think emotions are unique to the person. We all have the same functions of emotions, but we all respond to them different. And I think that's a beautiful thing because sometimes seeing how other people emotionally react can check our emotions as well. So we're not saying emotions are a bad thing. We're saying emotional regulation, how you regulate your emotions is what we're trying to bring light to. Now, when we talk about the amygdala, the back brain, that fight or flight, I love this conversation with the students because it always goes one or two ways, right? I love to give two examples. You're in a burning building. You have a choice to fight or flight. The kids, they react kind of like, oh, miss, if the building burning, I'm gonna find a way out.
Right.
Typical answer. Now, what riles them up? Favorite thing. And if you know me and you ever been in a school with me, I love to rile the students up. That's my thing. I love to rile them up. I say after school, there's somebody, because the schools that we serve, it's a lot of fighting. So like I say, I relate to them. You're walking after school. You and this person been beefing all school year. You walk out, you mind your business, walk into the gas station, about to get your snacks like nothing. You see the person who you've been beefing with 10 people behind them walking up to you. You already know what time it is when that person walking up to you. They all in stance battle, and it's just you. What do? Almost majority of the class will be like, well, miss, I'm going to fight. I'm going to get one person. They ain't going, like, it's crazy how they react to this. But then you have a few. So say you got 20 students. Out the 20 students, you'll have a good 3 of them that'll be like, I'm going to run.
Right.
And out of that 3, one of them will be like, I'm going to run and come back. Because I'm going to get my 10 people. But then you got the ones that's going to run. Because logically, one person cannot beat 10.
For sure.
It can go bad. So that is a perfect example of like that fight or flight, that responding in emotions because you feel like you got a point to prove, or I'm like they like to think that they're untouchable. Like nothing can happen to me. Now, even though we're pointing out emotional regulations, I think it's only fair that we give you guys tools to combat emotional regulations when it gets too high before we move on. One, journaling, therapy, talking to someone, maybe talking to yourself, finding a way to calm your emotions, finding out what triggers you. Because once you learn what triggers you, you're able better to regulate. You're able to not put yourself in too many situations that, okay, this may trigger me. Or when it does trigger you, you'll know that it's a trigger, and that way you'll be able to respond like knowing it is a trigger.
So self-awareness overall.
Self-awareness. So those are a few tools. I don't know, Greg, if you got any more that you can add on to it. But
yeah, for sure, definitely. And just to emphasize a point that she made, it's not just talking to anybody, but we always end the lessons with talking to a trusted adult, right? When we say trusted adult, right, just because they're 18 and they're actually legally an adult don't mean they're trusted, because they can be involved in all types of stuff that may contradict the points you're trying to make or trying to get help for. We're saying someone who, has a history of making wise and good decisions, have a history of being someone that's mature, someone who you can trust, someone that you can, who has a standard for themselves, right? It can be a parent. It could be an adult. It can be a coach. It can be a teacher even. It can be a big brother, big sister, someone. And with the time that we do have, we also, lend ourselves through the organization to be of assistance to you as well, which we have many, peer, mentor, mentee relationships with the students that we serve, to make sure that we're that extra push to point them back or remind them when they need it. Because guess what? Just because we teach them for a certain amount of time, 13 to 14 to 16 lessons, that can go all out the window once they go home. Yep. So that's why we have other outlets or avenues like the YLC, the Teen Talk, the SLA, the, summer internship and what have you, so that we can continue those relationships, to remind them to, emphasize on certain things, or just to be that listening ear when they need that help. So those are the things I'll definitely like to mention. So that's what emotional regulation, and we can't talk about emotional regulation or teenagers without talking about the sex talk, right? Now, I know we can get a little uncomfortable when we talk about that, but being that we're sexual risk avoidance educated, is something that we have to talk about, right? Now, LaQuisha, is sex a bad thing?
Nope.
Are you sure?
Positive.
Okay. Now, what makes it unhealthy?
What makes it unhealthy? Like we're talking about delayed gratifications, when you make emotional decisions in the moment. Okay. So what I see a lot in the schools is they have this, which we're going to talk about in our next episode, which is a plug, episode 4, love versus infatuation, where they have this infatuation with a person that they're dating. So if we're talking teenage talk, I love you by the second month. As long as you call me every day, FaceTime me every day, hold my hand a little bit in school, post me on your story, we in love. That is the infatuation part of it. That infatuation then leads to sex before its time, which creates now toxic, broken drama, false views of love, brokenness, sometimes as far as in obsessions.
That's key. And just to add on to that, when you have the lack of sexual regulation, or the word like we teach with abstaining or abstinence, you put yourself at risk for some of the things that we're about to mention. You put yourself at risk for STDs. You put yourself at risk for unwanted pregnancy or untimely pregnancy. And this is one thing that can't be detected on a urine test or blood test: broken heart. Right?
I always tell my students, especially the young men, you can wear a condom to protect you, but there's no condom for the heart.
That's key, right? And a lot of times, because it's a gratification situation, right? It's something that you have a desire, you have a sexual impulse, and you want to satisfy it, right? But because the brain is not fully developed at 25, because the brain is not fully developed until 25, because they're teenagers, because they're not ready for those responsibilities yet, they may overlook the consequences and think that it won't happen to them. Right. And that's unfortunate, but that's why we're here to educate. And that's why we go into schools to educate. It is a possibility. And the more you involve yourself with it when you're not ready. And when we say ready, this is what we mean. We mean had finished school, at least high school, at least college or some type of training, higher education training, at least working a job, and at least being married and bringing sex in a situation where both you guys are being monogamous and faithful to one another, and therefore bringing a child into that situation. Your circumstances or your chances of breaking up or your chances of, the relational, toxicity that comes with sex before marriage or sex when you're not ready for it can be avoided. Right. So that's really what we're trying to prevent. We're trying to prevent you from having that regret. We're trying to prevent you from, embracing responsibilities that you may not be ready for. We're trying to prevent you having to deal with the STDs, right? And I know we always have a few people that say, "Man, Mr. Greg, I'll use protection." Or they'll say, "Man, Mr. Greg, I'll use contraceptives." Okay, but let's look at the percentages, right? Not the only 100% way to prevent yourself from an unwanted pregnancy or STD is not a condom, it's not a Depo shot, it's not the withdrawal or the pulling out, it's not Plan B, it's not the patch, it's not none of these contraceptives, because though the percentages with some of them may be high, from 85 to 90 to 60 to 75%, they don't equate to the guarantee of abstinence. With abstinence, though it's hard, we're not minimizing the difficulty. Though it's hard, you don't have to deal with who did I last sleep with. You don't have to deal with, is the baby mine? You don't have to deal with some consequences or responsibilities that come with that you may not be ready to deal with. Because guess what? With children comes responsibilities. And those responsibilities can go far as finances, getting a job. Those responsibilities can go as far as staying with that person so the relationship can cultivate that child. The responsibilities can go as far as I may have to drop out of school so that I can get 2 jobs because I don't have any certification for nothing. And now, guess what? Not that your life is over, but your life becomes unnecessarily hard and difficult because of the lack of restraint when it comes to sexuality, right? So when we say no to sex, or when we say, wait, when we say abstinence, we're not trying to ruin your fun. It's because we are aware as educators of the reality and the responsibilities, and we know that the prevention is better than the cure. Right?
It's fair to say that too. As educators, when we are talking to our students, we understand that sometimes you're unaware of who you are. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I tell them all the time, you're young, you're still evolving, you're still learning. Embrace that. Because as you get older, as time change, you're going to see that your views are going to change. Your doctrine, things you stand on, all these things are going to change and evolve as you get older. So embrace that more, because when you make decisions, especially emotional decisions, mm-hmm. Undelayed gratifications in the time, you create lifetime habits that you didn't even know were habits. Mm-hmm. Just a quick example, going back to sometimes I teach in the all-girls school, and we're going to pull the sexual regulation and emotional regulation together. The all-girls schools, I naturally teach at. Sometimes I have all-boys classes if I go to a school and it's predominant male there too, and mm-hmm. it just happens to play out like that. When I hear the males speak about how they, not all male, but in certain schools and environments, right. When mm-hmm. you hear how the men speak about the women and what they don't trust about them, or how they're going to do them, or how they already do them. Mm-hmm. And then I hear the young ladies who experience men like that.
Right.
And how they respond, they call it their lick back. Mm-hmm. Oh, I don't know, the younger generation, how they respond. Some of them are only 15 and they already keying cars and breaking windows at the age of 15. Yeah. Because emotional regulation, you generally, rightfully so, hurt my emotions. I'm upset about it, but how you regulate is the most important. So now you're making life-affecting decisions off of an emotional state right then and there. And sometimes I wish I can kind of put both of them in the room so they could have these conversations so one can see the other side. But that ain't always the case. So I always have to teach based on like, okay, right now you're thinking about how you're going to hurt that person, but you're not thinking about how it's going to affect you. And sometimes with our emotions will trick us and say that if you respond like this, it'll make you feel better. Or it'll make that person feel like you. It don't always be like that, because 9 times out of 10, if they did something, not always the case because some people act on an impulse, but if they did something, say like cheating, that person probably have no remorse for cheating. That's probably their everyday life. So you're not hurting them at all by responding the way you did, because guess what? You're not the first and you probably won't be the last if that person is also moving on emotions.
That's key. And I think one of the antidotes to that is waiting, right? Because these issues could be prevented or could be sought out early on had we waited before we got committed to the relationship, and 2, had we waited for being involved in sex. Right? Because once you put sex on pause and you put restrictions on it, guess what? You have to deal with the person. And we talk about different ways of intimacy when it comes to from the lessons that we teach. We teach about emotional intimacy. We teach about verbal intimacy and communication. We talk about mental intimacy and so on, right? So there are other ways you can become close with someone and actually know who that person is before you involve sex. Because why? With sex, because sometimes we may be unaware of how we're wired as human beings, it's not just sex and that's it. No, because there's emotions tied to it, right? Here are some of the hormones that may come as a result of sex: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, right? Those are some of the few. And just a little overview: oxytocin is the bonding hormone. Right? That's the hormone that's produced from both genders that causes them to feel close and bonded together. Right? Now, if we're in a situation and we're both young, we're teenagers, we're not ready for any type of responsibility yet, we're still living with our parents, right? We don't know life yet, and we involved ourselves with sex, guess what? Our hormones don't know the difference between what we're doing, right? All they know is I feel good at this moment and I'm bonding with this person. Therefore, I love this person. Therefore, you end up opening Pandora's box into not realizing certain behaviors that you may not have been ready for or didn't realize you could have done had you not involved sex. That's why we're advocates to waiting. We're advocates to getting to know that person if you happen to be in a relationship, or overall, you don't have to be in a relationship. Just because your friends are in a relationship, just because your friends may be sexually active, which we got a statistic for that, just because it may seem the norm on social media and so on and so forth, doesn't mean that you have to do it. Because guess what? Those same people that you may try to copy or emulate, they're not there to help you with those consequences. They're not there to help you with the possible pregnancy. They're not there to help you with the STD that may be viral. Because some people think, well, man, if I get an STD, all I got to do is, go to the clinic and I'll be figured out. Well, what if the STD is viral and you're 14, 15, 16 years old and you now have to deal with a lifelong STD because you could not regulate your sexuality? These are some of the things that are disheartening. These are some of the things that we try to avoid and prevent through us being in the schools, right? So that's one of the things that we want to emphasize to you guys. So please, please, please understand your value. Understand that you don't have to be in a relationship. Understand that there are responsibilities that come with this. So if you're not ready to deal with that, please wait, tell yourself no, and understand the benefits of delaying gratification, right? So that's episode 3, season 1, delayed gratification, the benefits of telling yourself no, in the bag. Thanks for watching the Hallwaze podcast,
where we navigate the hallways of life.
Like and subscribe.